questions, and before you also type your questions, read this. अपना काम करो, तुम्हारा काम है मेहनत करना. Your job is to wake up every day and deliver your damn best. Whatever happens thereafter happens, we'll see. Okay, so let's start with our questions then. So for most of these questions, you'd find the directions on the same slide. Make sure that you keep pitching in a lot of it. So yesterday I said that, okay, I bring in a little more of vocabulary, but then I realized that if I add vocab, I may miss out on some of those question types that you asked me for yesterday. So let's save it for our next session together. But let's dive into verbal analogy first up. So somebody yesterday, I'm sorry, I could not really jot down the name, but somebody yesterday asked me, analogy karwa dena sir, analogy. So you know these verbal analogy questions where they give us two words that are joined using that ratio proportion sign. So choose the pair of words which best expresses the relationship similar to that expressed in the capitalized pair. So the capitalized pair is sculptor is to atelier, and you need to go ahead and talk about or choose a pair which is similar. So what do you think? Tense क्या है? अच्छा, with tense मुझे secret had been disclosed by the government before it was evening. Okay. इसमें अमित दो clauses हैं. जो पहला clause है वो है past perfect tense में had been वाला, और जो दूसरा वाला clause है before it was evening, वो time clause, वो है आपका simple past या जिसको हम past indefinite tense भी बोल देते हैं. All right, so coming back to this question now, atelier basically is a studio or a workshop, especially one that is used by an artist or a designer. So what do we do in verbal analogy questions? The first step is where we establish a relationship between the two stem words, the words which are given to us in the question. So can I say that atelier is where a sculptor works? If I have to look at it, atelier is where a sculptor works. So let's look at A. Can I say portrait is where a painter works? No. Can I say quarry is where a miner works? Quarry is a type of mine. So yes, quarry is where a miner works. That can happen. Sonnet is where a poet works. A poet can create or produce a sonnet. It's a song written in a particular meter. A house is where a man works. No, a house is where a man lives. So you notice B is the only one that gives us that same relationship, and that is why B is our answer. And to move back to Amit's question that we were discussing prior to it, Amit, the confusion here could arise from the fact that the sentence, the first clause is in passive voice. So please make sure that you also know the passive voice structure of each one of those tenses. Once you know that, it will become very easy for you to answer this. Okay. So focus a little more on passive voice. Then any other question? Vinod Kumar, sir, alliteration. Okay, what is alliteration? Vinod, do you know that we have something called a rhyme? What is a rhyme? Rhyme is when you see two words that happen to have the exact same last sound. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. So star and are. That is a rhyme. But then there are words that happen to have the same consonant sound at the beginning. The rhyme is where the last sound is same. Alliteration is a front end rhyme where there are two words that happen to have the same consonant sound at the beginning. For example, when I say secret superstar. So you notice both of these words happen to have the same alliteration at the beginning. And in fact, if you watch these Hindi news channels, they use it a lot. So there was a time when Indian cricket team was led by Saurav Ganguly. So back in the day, the cricket team was called Saurav Ke Surma. Then came in Dhoni and people became Dhoni Ke Dhurandhar. Then came in Virat and the team became Virat Ke Veer. And I haven't been watching much of TV of late, so I do not know what they call Rohit's team. So that's alliteration. What else? Any other question that anybody has popped up? Aryan, it. Okay, Aryan, we can discuss this later. That'll be too hardcore. Otherwise, I'd not be able to explain the rest of the things. Atashi, figures of speech. Okay. Let's see if we can sneak in a session in between. Let me talk to the team. We'll try to do that. And for the rest of you, here is the next question. Another verbal analogy. Give me the answer. But Aryan, just to keep it simple, in this particular sentence, I prefer their positions. Okay, Aryan has set the ball rolling by choosing D as his answer, closely followed by Vaibhav. Let us see if Anmol, Abhirami, and Sonali are also choosing D, and that's absolutely correct because savage and barbaric are both synonyms. And if I look at the answer choices, D is the only pair that gives us synonyms. Everybody has managed to get this right. If there is anything else that you want to ask here, please ask. Lucid, turbid are antonyms. Swallow, reject can be called antonyms, but definitely not synonyms. Puerile and senile are also words along the same lines. Yeah. Puerile is kiddish, childish. Senile is when you are old and are therefore not able to take well thought out decisions. जैसे हम हिंदी में बोलते हैं ना सठिया गए हो क्या senile हो गए हो क्या. So that's what it is. Here is question number 3. Verbal analogy, but then verbal analogy can also be asked in a slightly different way, slightly different variation. And here is that variation where harmony is to discord as insular is to what? Oh, somebody asked me about what turbid is. Turbid is muddy, not clear. Lucid is very clear. Turbid is something which is muddy or unclear. Then Ankit, in the case of alliteration, yes, only consonants, not in the case of rhymes. Good afternoon, Arbaz. So, harmony and discord are basically what? Antonyms, right? Harmony is lack of disagreement, whereas discord is lot of disagreement, lot of differences. So we are looking for a word which is antonym of insular. So what is insular? It's an adjective. If a person is insular, then it means that that person is interested only in his or her own country, his or her own group, and is not willing to accept different ideas or foreign ideas. You can use narrow minded, parochial, etc. as synonyms for this. Okay, so intolerant, definitely not an antonym. Cosmopolitan, on the other hand, is somebody who has that global outlook, can be an answer. Conservative, is once again somebody who would not be very willing, very open to new ideas. So kind of similar. Narrow-minded is anyway a synonym. So the best answer choice for this particular question indeed is B. So Smriti, C is not exactly an antonym, and therefore Smriti Atashi, so therefore it can really be eliminated. So that takes care of verbal analogies. If you have any other question about analogies, please do ask and I can dive into that. But here is your next one. So, Snap also gets into some very foundational grammar questions. One of those foundational grammar question is where they ask us about the part of speech. So in this question, I have given you a sentence with a word that is highlighted. It is bold, it is underlined, so you'd be able to spot it. Your job is to tell me the part of speech of the highlighted word. This should have been a comma. Let me go fix it. Okay, you guys are absolutely spot on. The answer is A. In fact, you remember fanboys. These seven happen to be your coordinate conjunctions for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. So, definitely a conjunction. And in this particular case, it goes on to join these two clauses with each other. So, A it is. It's not an interjection. Interjections show sudden expressions of emotions. Okay, here is the next one. Once again, underlined word. Give me the part of speech. And thank you everyone who's also adding the question number before your answer, because during that transition phase, it at times becomes difficult for me to figure out which question you'd answered. So that's absolutely wonderful, commendable. So Sanil, Vedehi, Sonali, Aryan, Abhirami, fabulous guys, keep doing that. Which sentence, Sahil? The previous one. In the previous sentence, we had at was a preposition, to was a preposition. Hi, so this here is an adverb. So you notice there in this particular sentence replies or gives you an answer to the question where. We did not spend the night where? There. So it is actually an adverb of place in this particular sentence. So you remember a single word can perform the job of different parts of speech depending upon the context, depending upon the sentence. So here it is essentially an adverb and not a pronoun. There, adverb. I see that a lot of you have also said that it is a pronoun. Dude, there, for that matter, is never a pronoun. This THEIR, that can be a possessive adjective or a possessive pronoun. They are, in this case, they is always a pronoun, but THERE, there is always an adverb because it always talks about the place. यार देख अब गूगल सर्च का तो पता नहीं प्रकृति गूगल पे not every source is accurate, so what I'd suggest instead is that you do have a dictionary. You can look it up there, or you can even go to say Oxford dictionary online or any other dictionary online and check it there. So you'd see. Sagar says noun and pronoun can never come together. Never have absolute terms in grammar. How about this? How about this? Sagar, I, and he went to a movie together. Noun and pronoun together. Right? Okay, here is the next one. So, slightly bigger, same thing, but in a slightly more bigger canvas. So, on the left hand side, you've been given four words. On the right hand side, four parts of speeches. So, you need to match every word with its part of speech and share your answer with me. I actually copied it from the test. I think I need to fix it a bit. Now that fixes it, okay? Should be fetters. Hmm. Now go ahead. Now give it a shot. That is why I was just solving it. I was like, something does not seem right. Now it is right. Okay. So the correct answer here should be A. Science says how to make wild guesses. Abbe, why do you need strategy for wild guesses? Generally you need to know the meanings of at least one or two words. For example, when it comes to raspy, I'd say raspy is easy, right? What is raspy? Raspy is voice. Voice. When you have a sore throat and you have that voice with that peculiar harshness, then it's called a raspy voice. So that's an adjective. Then what else do we know? Okay, then here is the word called malinger. You know that there are some people who try to avoid work by faking an illness, especially young kids. When they have to go to school, they'd say, "Yaar, I have a stomach ache, na पेट दुख रहा है मेरा." So people who fake illnesses, feign illnesses in order to avoid work, those you'd call such a person a malingerer. So malingerer is a noun. If you remove this er and say malinger, malinger basically is to pretend to be ill in order to avoid work. So that makes it a verb, right? So three will be a verb. So three is B. Then fetters basically are chains that you use to tie people. Bediyan, zanjeerein. That's very clearly a noun. And the first word, okay, the pronunciation. The pronunciation is en masse. En masse is all together. Okay, en masse is all together in a group. At the same time in large numbers. For example, he ripped up the paper en masse without looking at any of them. So he ripped up the papers en masse. So how did he rip up the papers? En masse, all together, without even bothering to look at them. In large numbers. So this is an adverb of manner, and therefore first is C, and that is why the right answer should be option A. There you. Smriti says since would be a conjunction or an adverb. Smriti, it depends on the sentence, but since is mostly going to be either a conjunction or a preposition. So if you use since to provide reason, yeah, he could not make it to your class on time since he had to consult a doctor. That's a conjunction. In a sentence like I've been studying since morning, that's a preposition, not an adverb. Fetters, Akanksha fetters. Fetter will lead to a problem in this question. Okay, here is the next one. So now let's get into some error identification. We couldn't practice it over the last two sessions of this series so far. So I'll give you a sentence which is divided into either 3 or 4 parts. If it is divided into 3 parts, then the fourth part will be no error, D. So if any of the parts has an error, then the letter corresponding to that part should be marked as your answer. If there is no error, then choose D provided such an option is available. So here you go. 'Elimination can work, but you need to be, say, if you can think of a sentence or two where you've met that word, you can very easily figure out the part of speech of that word. Seventh, it requires a thorough understanding of, giving you a hint, it requires a thorough understanding of tense. If you have that, you should be able to answer it. So you notice when you talk about these negotiations, they were completed in the past, but this part is stated using simple present. That's wrong. It needs to be, it very clearly needs to indicate that the action took place in the past. So an instinct will be that, okay, in that case, let us use were. The negotiations were completed, but were will also be wrong. Why? When when you come across a task that happened in the past, then you think, do I know when it happened? Does the sentence tell me when? If the sentence tells you the when, then you use simple past. But if the time of occurrence is not known to you, then you are supposed to use present perfect. So therefore, the correction here should be have been. Government has reportedly made its displeasure known, particularly on the speed and stealth with which the negotiations have been completed. We not really use had been, Mayank. That will make it past perfect tense. Past perfect tense has this one very peculiar, very specific use case. This is not a sentence that would satisfy that condition. Okay, next one. So this time around, you don't have a choice called no error. Go ahead, tell me if you see something wrong. Okay, so I see one answer, two, three. So Abhirami, Sahil, Suchanda, Prakriti, Atashi, the first five. Absolutely right, guys. The correct answer is B. And what is wrong here? This. You need the possessive case of one. So that should be one's. One's own organization. So you needed a possessive case. So it had to be one apostrophe s. Ones without that apostrophe is just a plural of one. And that is why this is incorrect. But I think most of you have managed to get this right. So here is the next one. What's your answer for 9? Okay, so C, this is a pronoun antecedent agreement issue. Instead of there, it should be it's, because the noun that it refers to is community and community is singular. So, yes, so that's fine. Cheesecake D is Vedi. D is absolutely okay. Uh, Here is the 10th question. So some of you were talking about figures of speech, figures of speech. So here is a question on figures of speech. So which of the following is an oxymoron? Tell me. Hmm. So first up, what is an oxymoron? An oxymoron is defined as a phrase in which two words of opposite meaning are brought together. So, it is a phrase where you have two words of opposite meaning. For example, hmm, okay, so let me give you some. Just settle this so that I could write. Huh. So, for example, you've seen this pretty ugly. If I write, it'll take a long time. But how about clearly misunderstood? Or give me an exact estimate. Act naturally. Found missing. I saw this new set by Zakir and it was seriously funny. In the chemistry classes, some of you have come across liquid gas, right? So, all of these, they're called oxymorons. So, in this particular case, you see this kind cruelty. That's an oxymoron. If I look at B, the camel is the ship of the desert. I think most of you already know that it is a metaphor. Metaphor. Where, yeah, absolutely, where the small crowd definitely will be an oxymoron. Absolutely, yes. Then if I look at C, art lies in concealing art. As figure of speech, we'll call this a paradox. And if you look at D, death lays his icy hands on kings. This is going to be personification. So when you treat an inanimate object as a person, you call it personification. If you give an inanimate object human feelings, you also call it pathetic fallacy. A lot of more examples here, huh? Bittersweet, yes. Deafening silence, yes. Half full, awfully good, wise fool. Painful pride, consistently inconsistent. Old news, old news. Should that be an oxymoron? Does news by definition have to be current? I don't know. I'd have to think of it. No idea. But some people say that happily married is an oxymoron. Difference in metaphor and simile. Yeah, when you use words like as, like, as in your comparison, you call it simile. When you make that comparison without uh, those words, then you call it uh, metaphor. Then difference between एंटीथेसिस कहाँ गया यार, अब भी तो पढ़ा था मैंने किसी का मैसेज. एंटीथेसिस एंड ऑक्सीमोरन. ओके, ऑक्सीमोरन are two words, okay, two opposite words that are placed together. In antithesis, they have to be two entire clauses that come in together. So you juxtapose two clauses that are contrasting and are placed together. So that's the difference basically. Anything else? Okay, a lot of questions here. I think you guys have tons to ask about figures of speech. Hmm. That's okay. I think we'll just try to see. Arba's paradox is two seemingly contradictory things occurring together. Euphemism is a polite substitution of a harsh word by a polite word. Paradox are two seemingly contradictory ideas where you feel that both of them cannot be true together. In antithesis, they are not. They are contradictory. Okay, so with that, let us get into our next three questions. Otherwise, this will become a class on figures of speech. So this is okay. Just to save you time, the next three questions are basically syllogisms. Okay, so here you go. Question number 11 on your screen. What's your answer? Hmm, 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 hmm. Yes, I think I can safely go with the majority here. B is right. For that matter, look at first. Some vehicles are cars. Look at the first one. All cars are vehicles. Now, if all cars are vehicles is true, then obviously some vehicles are cars. So this is true. Then look at fourth. Some toys are cars. Now, if some cars are toys is true, fourth must also be true. So therefore B. So both of them. Okay. Here is the next question. Hmm. Sahil, you talking about the previous question? Let me just go back and check. Yeah, that's true. That'll be true, yeah. Okay, so coming back to 12, most of you, I guess, have given the right answer. It is B. Third, let me just draw the Venn diagram first. So if I look at the minimum overlap, and those of you who worked with me, you know that the first diagram that we draw is the minimum overlap diagram. So some nodes are tablets. That's your third statement. Then all nodes are mobiles, and then all mobiles are laptops. So this, let me just draw this one again. Just clear this in. बहुत ज़्यादा ही छोटा बना दिया था मैंने, L भी नहीं पा रहा. So this is going to be the minimum overlap. So first up, let's check. First, all tablets are mobiles is not true in minimum overlap, so it's definitely invalid. Then some mobiles are laptops. It is true in this case. So it is true in this case does not mean that it is automatically valid. Then you look at the maximum overlap diagram, and in maximum overlap diagram you would see that laptops, mobiles and nodes are going to be equal. So it will be true there. So this is true. Some nodes are not laptops. Now you notice some nodes are not laptops is false in the minimum overlap itself. So we know that it has to be invalid, and therefore we arrive at the answer B. So some of us did go ahead and pick up D. We can go ahead and eliminate it. सत श्री अकाल AK vlogs थोड़ा लेट नहीं हो गया आज अपन. Smriti, there are two ways in which we can solve Venn diagrams. One is Venn diagrams, of course, syllogisms. One is Venn diagrams. The other is a Jugaad method where you need to memorize 8 rules. But then the problem with that 8 rule method is that it works only on those questions where you get two premises. And the other limitation of that method is that it can tell you whether something is true or not true. But if a conclusion is not true, then it is either false or can't say, or a possibility. That distinction is once again something that you cannot figure out using that method, and therefore I'd say that invest some time learning in learning Venn diagrams. You'd be able to deal with all types of questions rather thoroughly. Apart from that, yes, do learn those 8 rules. They definitely help you in some of these questions. Yes. Sahil, sir, if we say only second, then C is also correct. C is false. Where do you see some notes are not laptops? There is not a single note which is outside laptop. It is actually false. So only conclusion second is true. Now if you say neither conclusion one nor conclusion two, अच्छा इसको थोड़ा सुधारना पड़ेगा. बात तो ठीक बोल रहा है. हाँ, Blue Eagle, there are, yeah, that third method is, yeah. I know, but that requires you to be familiar with certain other things. So, Sahil, I see that. I see that. अभी मुझे नजर आ रहा है, मैंने शायद ध्यान नहीं दिया इसे देखते टाइम. इसको ठीक करना पड़ेगा सवाल. But I hope you get the drift. So here is the next one. What's your take? Atishi says 150 method. यार एक तो ना a lot of us use end up using different words for different methods. So I I haven't heard this label before, but I would love to connect with you after the class and see what it is. So you probably saying some is treated as 50, all is 100, maybe something along those lines, but I'm just guessing. So everybody says that second and third are true. The only difference is first. First conclusion is true or not. Look at the very first statement. Some machines are equipment. If this is true, some equipment or machines has to be true, no? And that is why the answer is A. You're correct. I think most of you are very well versed with syllogisms at the moment. In case you do face problems, we can probably sit down together on the app one of these days and saw it out if you need to know the basics. Huh? Here is the next one. But this time around, I'm not asking you syllogisms. I'm taking you back into the world of grammar. Change, choose the speech. Choose यार क्या कर रहा हूँ मैं? Change the speech of the following sentence. So here is the sentence. It is in direct speech. I want you to change it into indirect. Let me just fix it in the slide as well. Okay, so what do you plan to mark as your answer? Hmm. Okay, so the correct answer for 14th is B. See, when this verb outside of the quote marks is in past tense, then we change the tense of the sentence which is inside the quote marks. And what is the change? If the sentence within the quotes is in present tense, you choose the corresponding past tense. If it is in simple past already, then you use past perfect. If it is in past continuous, then you use past perfect continuous. You notice I saw a book there is simple past. So when you convert it into indirect speech, it needs to be in past perfect, and that is by D. The problem with B is that we have forgotten to change that tense. So in active passive voice, the tense does not change. But when you go from direct speech to indirect speech, the tense may change. So there are certain requirements, but then the tense may change. That is why D and not B. And here is your 15th question, where once again you need to change the speech of the sentence that you have on the screen. Okay, Sarvesh, that was quick. Vrinda, Abhirami. Abhirami, are we sure? Have you managed to change the tense? Sagar, focus on the conjunction that is used here. Plus, when we convert a direct speech question into indirect speech, it no longer remains an interrogative sentence. It becomes a declarative / assertive sentence. So the helping verb needs to go back to its original place. So the correct answer here is A. So first up, whenever the quote marks have a question, then you need to ask, is it a close-ended question? Is it an open-ended question? So if the question starts with one of these 7 words, okay, 6 W's, what, when, why, where, wale, and then how, then you do not need any conjunction. On the other hand, if your question does not have any of these, if it's a close-ended question where the answer will be just yes or no, then you use either if or whether as your conjunction. So I see only 2 sentences which have gotten the conjunction right. B and C can be eliminated at this juncture itself. Then the problem with D is that we needed to change this can into could. Moreover, even the location of helping verb should be now after the subject, because it is no longer a question but an assertive sentence, and that is what makes A grammatically